So I've got this big box here from Banggood. Now this is a pretty interesting 3D printer. It's not like the other ones I've reviewed. It's a bit different. Stick around to find out why. This is given to me at no charge for the purpose of review. So I haven't paid for this, full disclosure. It is the Geeetech A20M. Now there's a bit of a clue up here. So here's 2 spools of filament. That's right. It's a dual extruder. So this can print 2 colours at once. So on the top here obviously got instructions and stuff like that. We've got a power cable with a depth adapter. Depth adapters always handy things to have, but I don't recommend using them long term. If you can, replace the cable with the correct one, or change the plug or whatever. So underneath that pad there we've got a whole bunch of stuff. We've got a box with something in it, I don't know what's in there. We've got some filament and bits and pieces like that in there, some assembly, scraper, mouse pad, it's got some spool holders, some filament runout sensors as well. It does have filament runout detection built into it, which is nice. These are the 2 extruders. Now these are interesting because they've got these gear assemblies on them. It's got like a 3:1 gear ratio. They say it's to increase the torque. It's only going to grip as well as it grips onto the filament, so I'm not quite really sure about that particular claim. It would increase the accuracy, I suppose. Being a 3:1 ratio means you're going to, turn the stepper motor 3 times to get 1 turn out of the pinion. So the benefit there would be more accuracy with extruder feed, but I don't really think that'd be an issue anyway. There are some reports about these extruders giving problems and needing to be replaced because the gears stripping them after a while. I'm not sure whether that's really an issue, whether it's an old issue, whether it's no longer a problem, I don't know. These printers have been around for a few years. They're not new, they've been around for, I think it's 2018, I think they've been around since, maybe a bit earlier. This one's got a clip on it, this one doesn't. And I just found loose rattling around in here, a few bolts and washers and bits. I guess they're falling off the extruders. I guess they have. I might have to refit those, just chuck them to one side. Hope you don't lose them. The other compartment's also got a bolt and a washer and 2 of those. So I'm missing 1 bolt and 1 washer. Why? I guess I'll figure it out as I go along. So next thing is the big frame. Then we've got the main bed of the printer, which I might move the box down for and put it on the desk. I'll come back. So here we go, it's out. This there's the base, and this is also sitting in there. It's like a PEI sheet thing. I think they've got different versions. You have PI sheet or glass bed, and then obviously you have to put the sheet on yourself because it depends on which one you've actually got. Now I do actually have some spring sheet stuff. I think it's too small though because it's based on the end of 3. I do have a spare one which is a spring steel one, which I quite like. PEI is okay, but spring steel is quite convenient because you pop it off, Okay, I suppose I can always upgrade it later on. So I did find another bolt and another spring washer. So I'm missing 1 spring washer, and this also fell off, which is obviously 1 tensioners. It's the rear one just here. It's back there, so I have to put that back on. Just probably tighten these down before it'll fall off, I suppose. And when I set it up, the other spring washer fell out, so I've got all the bits now. When I was looking in Cura to sort of prepare for this particular process, but there are profiles in there for this particular printer, so I loaded the profile for this, which loads up dual extruder and that sort of stuff. But the profile didn't actually have heated bed turned on as a default profile, but it does have a heated bed, so I don't know whether it's an early revision didn't have heated bed, or I don't know, but this one does. Bit weird. So I was just moving the bed around here, and I noticed this cable here was actually tucked down in between the stepper. That's not good. So this might actually need a bit of cable management after it's actually assembled. I'm not quite sure how it's all going to go together. Maybe it'll get cable tied to here or something, but you don't want this getting caught on a stepper motor on the back there, because if it gets caught over the back of it, you're going to have a problem. You end up ripping your eyes off the heated bed or something like that. So little thing to watch out for, cable management. Now the question I always have is, do I bother reading the instructions? Now I'm not great at reading instructions, as in I just don't bother. I tend to just try and figure it out. But sometimes when it comes to doing assembly stuff, that's a quick start leveling thing, don't need that yet. Then maybe it's a good idea just to quickly have a read. Yeah, there's all the bits. Now this comes with a 0.4mm nozzle on it, 0.4 millimeters. And I actually quite like using a 0.2mm nozzle. So I'm actually very tempted to swap this out. If I've got one which is compatible, I'm not sure yet, I'll have to look into that. Because the sort of things I intend to print on this can be precision parts. And I could use 0.4mm on my into 3s, for example, and just use those for quicker stuff, where I don't need the precision. So assembly does see the parts list and putting all the bits together. And so first thing is put the gantry frame on, then mount the steppers, then mount the feed stuff, then all that's indicating. It looks like there's not much to actually assembling it. Wiring up should be pretty simple. I'd imagine everything's labelled, is it? Yes, it is. So there's a warning here as well, which I've mentioned previously in my videos on doing 3D printer stuff. Very important one. So this, do not move the X-axis and Y-axis quickly by hand. We don't move any access by hand. Once the stepper motors are connected up, especially. When they're not connected, it's not so much of an issue, but when they are connected, you potentially blow up your control board. So, because it basically turns into a generator and backfeeds voltage into your control board, which can be very bad. Oh, check the voltage, I should definitely do it now. So I've spun it around, it's on its side right now. Voltage selection 230, 115, and it's set to 230, so that's fine. That's what I want. That's all good. Now, one of the options for this printer, which I also requested when I asked Banggood for this particular printer, is the 3D Touch as well. So this comes with the 3D Touch. It's like the BL Touch clone, I suppose, but it's called the 3D Touch, which is also made by Geeetech. So that is also in the kit, so I will need to add that on as well. 3D Touch is an option. You don't necessarily get it. You might find there's packages which do come with it. This particular one didn't come with it. I asked for it as an extra item, which they've obviously included, which is great. So in this bag here, we've got some extra bits and pieces. So we've got some tools for doing the assembly and other general stuff. Unclogging tools, if you get nozzle clog, got little spanners and things like that for adjusting things, and brackets and stuff for the filament holders, so I can stay in there for now. Not worried about that part just yet, that's pretty straightforward. Some nozzles and some extra bits in here, some extra clamps for something. That might be for the filament holders maybe, I'm not sure. Hardware and another bracket for something, or it could be spare, I don't have a clue what that's for. So having a look at the manual, which I never read. That bracket there is an extruder head wire, so obviously there's the mounting bracket thing for that. Mesh's toolkit, and we got machine installing screws, as it says here. Doesn't specify exactly which bit they're for. Filament holder we know about. Doesn't differentiate between which bolts are used for what. It's not on this page. So this page specifies use of M5 by 35mm bolts. They said screws, but they're not screws, they're bolts. M5 spring washers to hold the upper and bottom gantry frames. Okay, that's the M5 by 35mm. What I've got to find. The interesting thing is this kit's got a whole bunch of ones which look like the right ones, and so does this one. But these ones don't have washers on. Oh, maybe there's some washers in there, but these have got washers built onto them, so I might just use these ones because they're probably the right ones. Right, so the frame will sit on here. So as this comes with all the toolkit as well, we've just got to find the correct Allen key, which I think will be this one here, I expect. So I've already one bolt, just got it started, just get it lined up, let's get the other one in. I'm doing this by feel, because why not? And that's through. Now you have to make sure you get this all straight and aligned before you try and do things up. Okay, let's get that one started as well. Alright, that's going in. Now I'm going to tighten these down, it's going to get them, take all the slack out so it doesn't move around too much, and I've got to do the other side. But you can see you've got the hole through there, and the bolts go through the frame, as I was saying, there's a frame there. Right, that's that side kind of in, I'll just do the other side. So it's pretty easy to put these things together, it's just you have to think about what you're doing and make sure you do stuff in the right order. Don't rush. You could always easily make a mistake and strip a thread or over tighten something or pinch something. Just take your time with it. And once they're all snug, then you actually need to tighten them. Now, because of the length of this Allen key, which is left remaining, you can't really turn it around and use the proper length. So what I use is a ring spanner. Doesn't really matter what size, just turn it up just enough to feel like it's going to grab nicely and hold. Right, don't over tighten. There's probably some kind of torque setting you should use, but I don't have a torque wrench, and I doubt you do either. So just do it by feel. Don't do it super tight, okay? Just just here. Don't use the full length of the spanner. Just up here, like an Allen key length. So that's all those tight now. Tighten them all up using that same technique. Allen key ring spanner. So it should be nice and stable now. Shouldn't wobble around. I've got a bit of play in there because the whole bench is wobbling a little bit because of rubber feet. It's all rubber mounted, so that's not too bad. There is a bit of play in there actually. It's got a bit of twist and stuff in it, so tightening these up at the top might also be helpful. Let's just check those, make sure they're tight. Yeah, they're a little bit loose, so tighten those up as well. They help make it a bit more rigid. It's actually a good idea to do this stuff once you put it together anyway, and just go through and make sure the bolts are nice and tight, because they're probably not fully tight from the factory. Tightening them once you've got the thing on the base and it's all assembled, then you know it's going to be fairly square. Feeling slightly better, not much better, but slightly. So the next thing it says to do is to put the extruder motors on. They're supposed to sit in this direction. These will come around at the front of the motor. Let's get the camera a bit higher so you can see what I'm talking about. That's the filament sensor, it goes on that side. So that must be that way and on the back, because the reason I'm reducing this on the back is because this front channel's got a strip in it, rear channel does not have a strip in it, so therefore this is meant to go on the back, like that. Obviously all these bolts which all fell apart with the washers and everything on them, you've got to fit all those. Your bolt, washer goes over the bolt, stick it through the bracket, we get a slot nut, stick it on there, wind it on a couple of threads, so make sure it doesn't fall off, and do the same for the other ones. They're probably on there originally when they shipped it and they've just fallen off during shipping. That sort of stuff happens, vibration maybe. Right, that's on there. I'll do the other one and I'll come back. Right, so that's how they look afterwards. You can see the nut is faced that way. Right, so it's what, wedge shaped, and the grippy side with the slot profile is towards the bracket. Okay, because what you got to do is put it sideways, put it through the slot, and as you do it up it will turn. But you need to make sure it turns, because if you're not sitting quite straight with this, it could be sitting on an edge and it won't turn and you won't actually clamp on properly. So make sure that when you do these up, look inside the channel and make sure they actually turn sideways so they sit like that instead. So let's get this first one fitted. Now we're just going to get the nuts in about the right place, so we won't tighten it. What I found from using these kinds of nuts before in the past is they can dig into the channel and they can get stuck. They like bed themselves in there and then you can't move it around, you can't slide it. So just get them in there so they're just snug but not tightened down. Okay, so I'm going to slide that one. So I'm going to spin it around so I can see what I'm doing the other side. And I'll try and show you the nut as well if I can. I don't know if you can get in there with it. As I turn it, you see the nut turn. Now it's in place. Alright, so we'll just tighten up a little bit. Again, just take the slack out so we can still slide it. Okay? Now we'll do the other one. Okay, so they're both mounted on there now and they're both loose. They both can slide. Okay, which is exactly what we want. The spool holders have got to go in between these so they feed off into them. And they basically got to be mirror imaged, so one goes one way, one goes the other. Let's get the spool holder. Alright, so they're not exactly the same, so make sure you use the correct ones. And we shall mount these on. There'll be some hardware for that somewhere. I guess they will go this way round, so it faces outwards. Okay, so that's where it fits on like that. And I'll get one of the nuts. These aren't actually nuts, they've got like a wedge system on them. I don't know whether you can see that there. You can see a wedge. So you just put the nut on and turn it and it will eventually lock down. So you put it on. You can see it's got like a slot there which those two pins will go through. Like that. And you give it a turn. And it locks it down. Doesn't have to be super tight, just make sure it doesn't fall off, that's all. And do the other one. So in this bag here we've got some more hardware, which I think will be the hardware we use to fit these on. It looks about right for that. The thing with these is you have to make sure that the feed from the spool is going to basically be a nice straight line as much as possible into here. Alright, because if you think about the spool, it's going to be feeding off. You're going to have a bit of an angle coming around. Is there a way of doing this nicer? I'll have to think about this. Okay, that's how it's mounted on. I use this Allen key here. That's those on there now. And now I can slide these over and get them as close as I can to these in order to ensure the spool is going to be right. So that one there, the centre's probably here actually, so this one I probably need to move over a little bit, but this one can be okay. I think that's alright there. So now I'm going to tighten these ones up. Somewhat easier. I'll use the Allen key afterwards to tighten it up at the arse a little bit. So next step apparently is to fit this cable guide on. So apparently the next step is to fit this cable guide thing on, which it looks like I've got to loosen these bolts here off to fit it under there. Looks like it sort of slips under, like that. Well, I couldn't fit it at the factory, I'm not sure. You see this is wobbling around a lot. You have to adjust all those wobblers and everything on them. That's not surprising, it's quite normal. It's on. So, next step. What do you reckon? That's it. Next thing is wiring it up. Well, does it say about tightening anything up yet? No, it doesn't say anything about adjusting anything. Doesn't say it. But we will need to adjust this. Right, that's really not unsurprising. We'll need to adjust things. Probably the one under here we have to adjust, I'm guessing. So I'll pull it down. Guess we'll find out. Anyway, wiring. Let's get this off. Don't cut the wire. Cut the cable tie. What do we have here? We've got two extruder motors. We have to make sure we get the right ones as well. That's X. That is extruder 0 and extruder 1. So 0 will be this side and 1 will be that side because that's the lengths of them. So I'll plug that in there. Filament sensors have got to go on. We'll put those on shortly. So they've got the X axis. That one's already attached. So this one here. X and Y, I always get them mixed up, just don't remember them. It's incredible. I actually work with robotics as well. and I never remember. It's incredible. Plug that in. One here for the sensor, XES, which will be end stop, which you can probably barely see on shot there. There it is, right inside there. So let's poke that in, line that up, and try and poke it in place. There we go, that's it. So we've got this one here, which is the Z, and another stop here as well. So it's Z end stop. Put the Z in. These are keyed, so you can only put them in one way. And the end stop one is over there. It's right there. See it now? So we've got to go underneath and push it up. That's that one in. Now these need to be pushed into place, so I'm going to push these in now. I'll show you one I was missing a clip. Make sure these are pushed in as well. Alright. The other thing we've got to do, obviously we've still got to do the 3D touch as well. We've got to put this on, mustn't forget to do that. Because that goes on this bracket. It's already mounted on the side here for you. It's already there. And I think there's actually a connector on here. We just plug it straight into this back here. That needs adjusting. This needs adjusting. And I've seen a whole bunch of cat here. So just up the back of here, you can probably just barely see it. There's a nut. It's like a square shaft. So we need to get the right spanner for that. Is it this one? If you do this, do it slowly. Like I said before, don't move things fast. Right, now let's turn this. You see it's getting, so if I see it wobbling it, as I turn it, it gets tighter and tighter, tighter. Now you don't want it to be tight, you want to take the slack out. You must take it so there's no wobble. Once the wobble's gone, then you're right. Like that. Alright, so that one is now adjusted. No slack in there now, that's gone. So I need to do the same thing for the bed as well, because obviously it's got the same issue. And ones for the bed, which are a little bit tricky to get to, they're just down inside here on the left hand side in this case. So let's just try and give these a turn if I can get onto them. I don't know which way I've got to turn it yet, we'll find out. So that one's definitely a bit loose. Okay, that's getting there. Alright, that's that one done. Now it's got to do the other one. The back one is wobbling. Don't know if you can see that. So we need to tighten this one up. Trying to find a point where it starts to take the slack out. Feels like it's tightening up there. Yep, there we go. Getting the playout is quite important because otherwise you don't get repeatability. Repeatability is important when it comes to 3D printing. These are just oval washers basically. Well, oval nuts. So move in and out. There's a bit of flex in this thing anyway. It's just the nature of things. Still a little bit there. Fortunately, you can't just see where the high spot is and where the low spot is. You have to sort of do it by feel. But it's super important you get this right. It should still move fairly freely, alright? This will bed in anyway. That's probably a little bit tight. If you do it too tight, it'll stress things a little bit. Yeah, that one there needs to be harder. I think this one needs to come off slightly. Yeah, it wants to drop by itself a little bit now. It's just about there. So, I've still got this other cable here which has got to be mounted on. This goes to here. Alright, so that's the main hot end thing. So I need to make sure this hasn't got twists and anything like that in it. It does have a cable management thing just here, so we attach it to that as well. So that goes in there like that. Now the BL Touch will just, well, 3D Touch will just plug in the back of here, I believe. And then we've just got the cable tie this up and make it all nice and tidy. So these filament sensors, these are supposed to be mounted on here, right? Now, the thing I don't like is that when that's mounted on there, this angle here to the spool, that's almost directly below it at the end. So what that means is that it's actually going to be pulling, if it gets a low amount of filament, it's pulling quite hard around there. I don't actually like that. Now what I have seen some people do is actually just leave the things loose and not actually attach them to this, not mount them on, just feed the filament through it and just leave it hanging off the filament, and that works fine. But what I'm thinking I might do is potentially bend that bracket up a little bit. So if I just did that, that might be all it needs, just take the edge off so it just curls it in. I'll see, I'll get a spool of filament on there, see how it fits. Well, this is a spool of filament, we'll see how this fits on there. So that's going to sit in there like that. It's okay when it's full, it's a pretty good angle when it's full. So when it's really low though, the filament's coming off this edge. Oh, I dropped it, let's get the other one. Alright, so that'll sit there. And the filament will come from here, which means it's coming around here, basically trying to do probably a, I don't know, 80-degree turn to get in. If I can bend it up, that might work, but I think it's going to be in the way. Yeah, I'm not liking that. There's probably a better way of doing this. Yeah, I'm just not liking the angle. So I'm a bit further along now. I've done the wiring. I'll show you that in a minute. I'm just putting the sticky bed on. Right, so I'm started peeling it off. So you start on this corner here. Get that corner just down a little bit. You don't peel it right back. You get it lined up and you go diagonal corners. So get this corner here to line up over here. Alright, and then you stick down these edges. And you just peel a bit more. Realign it. Check that, still pulling nicely straight. Rub a bit more down. Keep doing that to make sure it stays straight. Okay. And it's probably safe to do all the way now because it will be straight. Just make sure there's no bubbles in it, that sort of stuff. If you don't want that happening. So always do from the middle outwards. And there we go. That seems alright. We go around tightening up things. I'll be finding little bolts and things that need tweaking. The buttons on the bed, which actually hold the bed onto the frame. Those bolts need tweaking up a bit more as well. These are the ones on the carriage and they need adjusting as well. So when you get your print, just go through. Once you've got it assembled, go through, make sure everything's nice and tight. Because otherwise you might find there's one which isn't quite tight enough and you get a bit of play. And it might cause you some alignment issues or instability with the print. You might find the positions change very slightly because of the wobble and a bit of play and things. So tighten everything up, get it all nice, and then it should be good. I should show you the other trick I do with these rollers as well. I didn't show you before. So like up here, that one there, do the exact same thing down here, but you can try and drag it. So you try and turn it, see if it will spin, right? You should get a little bit of drag. You should be able to turn just a little bit, but without being sloppy. And it should just, you should be able to turn it in place, all right? Check all the bearings or that. Like I had to do the ones on the carriage here. These are actually a little bit too tight now. I think I need to just tweak those slightly more. These other ones are spinning. The inner ones are locked up, so it's like maybe I need to just tweak this off a little bit and actually adjust that once I find what I've done with the Allen key. So I do correct for this tightness where the outer ones are a bit loose and these ones are really tight. It means these rails are leaning inwards very slightly. Right, so what I'm going to do is loosen these off a little bit. Loosen off all these, which ones which I tightened up before, ironically. Right, so this will then shift very slightly. It's not about much of a movement, you talk about a fraction of a millimetre is all we're talking here. That means this can all move around a little bit. They can move just a fraction of a millimetre, which means this should help to self-align. Well, now I'll be pushing these outwards a little bit, help it to align. I might have to do the same thing on the bottom, loosen the bottom ones off and just see how it goes down there. I'm just going to put it right down and I'll see how tight it is down the bottom. So down the bottom here, that's all the way down. That's tight, doesn't want to spin. But these two here, the outer ones, do want to spin. They're with drag, like they're supposed to be. Right? There's a bit of drag on them. But the middle ones, this one at the bottom here, the bottom corner is just out of shot, just down here. That's turning a little bit freely. Means these need tensioning up together to push this out. But so does that one. But there is already really tight. So what I think I need to do is loosen off the gantry here and just let it pop out slightly. Okay, so now I've done that adjustment on that. I'll loosen those off, retighten them again. That just let it all pop out just a little bit. These are sitting much better now. The drag on the outer ones has increased a little bit and the one on the inside has come off slightly. So these are now looking about right across the whole set, which is exactly what I want. Okay, so you can see I've mounted the 3D Touch on the side here, an original bracket. It did come with some mounting hardware and some extra bits and pieces as well, because obviously it's like a generic one, comes with other kits as well. You can buy these independently and put them on other printers. Like I put this exact same unit on my Ender 3, for example, my very first one. I did a video on that showing the whole process. So it's mounted on there. I run the cable over the top, runs around the back here just to keep it tight and keep it out of the way. I'll probably put some tape or something to hold it down to keep the stress so it doesn't rub or anything. Runs around the back and comes under and goes into the back there. Now the thing that's not clear is which way up these connectors go. I can tell you which way they go because I've read the circuit board. So this manual comes with the little 3D Touch sensor, and these are the pinouts for the connectors. So you've got a 3-pin one. So red is plus 5 volts, orange is control signal, brown is ground. Why I didn't use black I don't know. Anyway, and the 2-pin one is white is Z minimum, so it's like a little Z switch, and black is ground as well. Okay, so the black and the brown we have to know where those ones go. It doesn't actually say anywhere the orientation for this sensor, how to plug these connectors in. And you need to get it right, otherwise if you put this one in upside down, you're going to be plugging it in backwards and you could blow it up. So I'm going to show you which way these go. So here you go, here's the connectors plugged in. So you can see up here we've got the brown on the top, we have red in the middle and yellow in the bottom. And the right connector, black at the top, white at the bottom. Because on these two sockets inside you've got a 3-pin and 2-pin socket just on the inside here, little header pins. Both of them, the top pin is the ground connection. If you look through there you can just see the word GND on those 2 pins, so that means that these go this way up. Okay? There's another connector here which is for a different kind of sensor I think, or something else, I'm not quite sure, maybe even RGB stuff, I'm not sure what that's for actually. So what I'm going to do, once I'm sure this works, is I'm going to put some sealant on there to lock that in, like I've done on here. I'll put some sealant on that connector there, so that can't possibly wiggle loose. That's what this bracket here was for as well, so that help hold it in. So you put a cable tie around the bracket and just get onto these wires so they don't wiggle free and pull that connector out, because that'd be bad. That'll turn off your hot end and everything, you know, or could even disable your sensor, and I don't know, it depends what you could do, but make sure that does not come out. Very important. So that's why you have to cable tie that bracket there. And I'll do the same with these. I'll put some sealant on those to hold those in place, just to lock them in. I mean, just to be sure it don't come loose. And as far as cable tying and stuff goes, it does say to use this bracket here to cable tie on. I did actually do that originally. I was thinking, yeah, but it doesn't work very well. And it actually had this loom here, cable tied to that. And when this is, you have to allow for enough slack for this to be over here. But when it's over here, this can sag down and drag you across your build plate. You don't want that to happen. Right? You definitely don't want that to happen. Even up here, you can see it could potentially drag. Right? So that's something to be wary of. If you need to, I suggest potentially putting some kind of hanger on this, maybe off one of these other units up here, or off here maybe, you know, something just to hold this up, something elasticated, you know, just to keep it out of the way. It might be necessary. Right, I'm going to drop this right down again to show you something. So that's now right down, and you can see how I've cable tied this. So I didn't use that bracket at all. I've got the cable coming up as a one big loom up to this point here. Then I've got the one splitting off for the x-axis. Okay, so that's splitting off to there. You could maybe tie that onto there, but I didn't really think it's necessary. I think it's okay as it is. But what I don't like is the way it's basically hanging off this connector here. I don't like that. I may need to sort of look at maybe tying it onto here somehow or something. I'm not quite sure if I can do anything about that. There's no real way of doing it here. I might have to look at making some kind of hanger or something. I just don't like the way it's hanging off these connectors, because it could actually gradually fracture the wires. From this thing moving backwards and forwards like this, it'll gradually fracture them. For now it'll be alright, I'll do something about it later on. And I've got cable ties up here just to keep this loom together. And I've got basically, so it's hanging from this one, which I don't like much, but what it does, it keeps it out of the way. So at least in doing a low print, this is well clear of the bed. Right, I've got my hand in there, and that's right, that's at bed level. So as it comes up, this will droop more. I think when I get to about this height, then it might be a problem, but it may still need more tweaking. I may even have to like tie these together like this or something like that, just to keep it well out of the way. You know, coming from above is better, but then it's still hanging off these connectors. Is what I don't like it. So I'm probably going to do something with that. But you need to sort of think about this when you build yours, how you're going to deal with this, and make sure you're not going to get anything snagging on the bed. Or instead of having these like that and fixed in place, I've left one bolt in there, just the very back one, so it can hinge. That means it's got a bit of play in there for when it's actually on the spool. So the spool comes towards this side, it can spin a little bit and take a bit of stress off the filament. I've also bent these brackets up a little bit to try and angle them closer to the filament, so it's coming around at less of an angle. I don't know if that's going to be good enough, we'll find out I suppose. But at the moment that's what I've got. I'm not completely happy with this arrangement. So there you go, it might be absolutely fine. I'm paranoid about snapping filament. You know, although those would detect it, it's best not to snap it in the first place. Another thing to consider is maybe moving these spool holders. Maybe I put those somewhere else, which gives a better feed line into it. So basically it is now built. Haven't powered it up yet. I should probably do that. And the other weird thing is it came with this bag of bolts. I've got absolutely no idea what they're for. Haven't used them. So before we do anything, you've got to make sure that this thing isn't going to crash into the bed, because we've done no height adjustment at all yet. So what we need to do is wind this thing down until it touches that switch there and clicks there. Well, as soon as that switch clicks, we stop winding it down by hand, and then we'll adjust these to touch the nozzle, or just about touch the nozzle at each corner. Alright, and that'll be pretty close. Then we'll do it probably with a bit of paper, at least until we get the 3D touch working. I think I need to do a firmware change. I think I have to upgrade the firmware to enable this feature. I'm not sure yet. I think I'll need to though. So let's wind this down. Okay, so that's right at the bottom. So I'll pull this over here, do this front corner. And we'll adjust this up. So let's get that really close, so it's just about touching. I can just see a really small gap in there right now. Okay, so I'll do the back corner there. And adjust that one up. Get the height. Go for the same kind of gap. Right, what I'm really trying to do is make sure that it's got a gap. That's actually fairly flat, it's not bad. Sometimes you can move the bed around and you can see a big cave in it. But this one at least is looking pretty good so far. So let's move the nozzle that way. Now probably when you're doing this, use a bit of paper. But at this stage I'm just doing optically by eye. Again, don't move things fast. Now you have to do this a few times usually, because that's about a gap there now. There is actually a bit of wobble in this bed. That could be a problem. I can see this here. We'll have to see how that goes. What I tend to do though when I'm doing printing is print in one area. Right, so what I tend to do, if you're printing on the extremities, you're going to find you're going to get much more variation and much more wobble in the bed. If you print towards the centre, it's going to be much more stable. Okay, so I actually recommend that if you can, you print over here somewhere. You know, in this strip. I tend to print on the front because it's convenient. I tend to print in this area if I'm doing small stuff. I don't do in the corners if I can avoid it. Maybe this corner because it's convenient because of the travels, but as long as that's heighted correctly, it's alright. Also, I could do this electronically by telling it to move the bed and move it a bit once I turn it on, but right now I just want to do it this way. Already verified, as I showed before, that the power supply is set to the correct voltage. In my case 230 volts because it's the country I'm in. It's 230 volt supply. If you're in a different country with a different voltage, then you may need to check that and adjust it as required. Right, let's turn this on and we'll power this up in a second. We'll see what power it draws, this sort of stuff. 3D Touch is flicking, so that operated at least. Drawing 9 watts currently, and we'll check the screen, see if it looks like it's okay or not. The screen is looking okay so far. Let's peel the film off so I can see a little bit easier. It's like the nerd porn part of this bit, isn't it? Peeling off the film. Let's do some tests to see if we've got any controls. So, what we got here? No SD card, that's right. About printers, look at that first, shall we? Printer info. 1.18 Marlin, put the old version. Extruder's 1. No, it's got dual extruder. What does it say? One extruder. Anyway. That's curious. The misters. Up to 265 degrees apparently. 100 degrees. 100, oh sorry, 100k for that one. 125 for the bed. Okay. That's interesting though why I said only one extruder. Because there's definitely 2 extruders. That's curious. Well, the mixer was there, so at least it recognises that we've got 2 extruders there. It's interesting, I only said 1 before. Control. Right, let's look at temps. Nozzle, we'll try heating that first a little bit. Let's go to say 50 degrees. We'll try that out. And then after that we'll do the bed. We need to do them independently in case there's an issue with wiring or something like that, you never know. So there you go, 50 degrees there. Yeah, it's looking like it's fine so far. Let's see if it overshoots by very much. 2 degrees, yeah, that's fine. That's nothing really. Okay, let's do the bed as well. Bed temperature. This will take a bit longer to come up, so let's just do, I don't know, let's do 40. Fan speed 0. Let's adjust that, see if it comes on. Yep, fans come on. That's fine. Sometimes you get a speed that just stops because they can't maintain it. To find out what that limit is. 90. We'll start on 90 just. Mindful of when you're doing fan control. Don't assume that 10% fan control is going to work because that's 25 on this thing. That wouldn't do it. It wouldn't start at 25% or 25. The speed 10%. All those temperatures, I don't know what that's about. Minimum max temperatures. Okay. Fact, I'm not sure what that's about. PID controls. Auto tuning. Preheat. Okay, that's nice. Having auto tuning. Let's come back out of here and see what we're getting. The bed's now at 40 degrees. That's cool. That's looking alright. This looks like under control properly. So now let's try moving some stuff around. So come down to the motion menu in here. Oh, you can do acceleration and jerk control in here as well, and steps. Nice. That's velocity controls. Acceleration and stuff, that's fine. Jerk settings, that's handy to have. Steps. That's nice to be able to tune as well. So the main thing is the extruder steps. 395 in this case, because it's got that tripler motor on there. If you change that, you might need to change those settings. Nice one to prepare. There we go. So let's move the x-axis first. Move 10mm. Yep, that's working fine. Do a homing as well. Once that's verified everything moves properly by manual methods. There you go, it's working. Somewhat noisy, but it's working. There you go, so let's try to go too far because it's not home probably. Yeah, that's right on the edge of the bed with that nozzle. Let's do the Z axis. That's going up, sweet. Yeah, do 250mm and we'll see how that goes. It's going to take a little while. I also want to make sure it goes all the way to the top. Well, 250 is high enough anyway. I'll do it all time again and I'll bring his movements each, so they've got to move. Right, but why isn't it coming down? This switch, it seems to be on all the time. See that light there is on? That's not right. That's why it didn't go down, because it thinks it's already made it. So I solved the problem of it going straight back up, or not going down, by unplugging the BL Touch, well the 3D Touch, get the name right. Obviously the firmware is not allowing for this being in play. It went down, it wouldn't stop going down. It wasn't activating and the switch wasn't turning on. And what I found is this pin here, this plug, this pin's come out. So I just need to adjust this little tab on the back which locks it in. So it will lock it in, it's not locking right now. And we'll push that back in again and see if it locks in place. There we go, now it's locked in place. So this wasn't properly assembled. Another little thing to watch out for, so if you get a bed which goes right down, doesn't stop. Do we have a red light coming on there now? Yes we do, so that's now working. So that's good. Something to watch out for. Right, now we can do another homing. Prepare, auto home, move things over again. Prove it all works. Because what it does, it goes up, everything around, thing comes down. That's what I should do. There we go. Worked that time. Sweet. So a few little teething problems there. Obviously the firmware is not right for this touch sensor. I'll need to upgrade the firmware so that will work. Unless now I've got that connection fixed, maybe that will work. I could try that, couldn't I? Let's disable steppers again, so I can move it. And I'll plug that back in and see if it changes anything. Maybe it'll be okay now. If this goes up instead of up and down, then I'll know. See, that is replacing this sensor here. That light's on again. Let's try it anyway. But I don't think it's going to work until I update that firmware. No, see, it needs a firmware changing in order to use the touch sensor. I'll unplug that for now and leave it off, and I'll update the firmware later. Now it's dropped into this other configuration here, and oh, it's dropped out again, of course it is. Control, filament, and run out sensors are turned off. So the turnout's back on. It should be on by default really, shouldn't they? Filament diameter, so you can tune the filament if it's got some variation, I suppose. Turn the bug off. Unfortunately there's no firmware in here already for 3D Touch, which is a shame because it's got the capacity to do it. So I need to update the firmware. And now I've turned the filament sensors on, you can see error, no filament showing up. So at least the filament sensor's working, for one of them is. Don't know which one, we could find out I suppose. Let's show us something in there and try and trigger them. There you go, printer ready. So I'll pull this one out. Yep, so the left one is sensing, put that back in. The right one was also sensing, great. So both the filament sensors are working. So there is one little thing with this particular printer which I've noticed when I was trying to get this bed set up right. Is if you look at the bearing, this is the roller bearing in the bottom of the bed. Right, there's the adjuster here. Right, there's the adjuster. That's one of the roller bearings in the bottom of the bed. Right. If you look at this, I'm moving the bed up and down. See it moving within the bearing? That isn't supposed to happen. So I think that is part of the problem with getting the bed exactly right on this thing, because it's shifting. It'll sit down or sit up like that. See? What it is, I have this plastic sleeving over the top of the actual bearing. Obviously in this case it's a bit loose. It's not been secured properly somehow. So what I might actually have to do on this one is pull it apart and glue those plastic rollers onto the metal bearing so they don't slip around. Assuming that's the part that's moving. It could be the bearing itself, but it shouldn't be. So that's something to watch out for. If you've got bearings like this which are moving around too much, then it will cause you some problems. That needs fixing. But in the meantime, we'll carry on anyway and get some kind of print out of it. And this is where we were looking before, just in there. It's moving about a millimetre or so, half a millimetre maybe, for where it'll sit, up there to there. So you can see the bed sitting slightly high there. Push it down, that's sitting slightly lower. And that shouldn't happen. Right, so I actually want to try and print on this thing now and see what actually happens. So it's powered up. I've put a G code on the SD card, which is my model, which should be 2 colours. Should print one layer then the other layer. I don't have a purge towel. I'm just going to do it without a purge towel. I'm just going to run one straight to the other. I put the filament through, but I've never heated this up to full temperature. Never put a filament through it. So I'm going to do that first, get some purging going on down here, and then we'll do a print. Right, so first you have to heat it up. So it's going here. Prepare. Preheat PLA. We need to do that first. And that's going to set the bed to 60 degrees and nozzle to 190. The bed's actually a bit hotter than I want. I actually want the bed to be about 50 or so. So I actually will adjust that. My print profile is always set to 50 for the bed. That's just what I found works for me. If it still needs to be the same on here, I'm not sure, but we'll find out I suppose. What I might do though is control, temperature, bed. We'll drop that down to 50. Okay. I can smell it heating up, so that's working. Bed is already pretty warm. Now on my other printers I've actually put a cork mat underneath. So it's a cork bed underneath the metal plate here. And that just helps to insulate the metal plate so the heater doesn't have to work so hard. And it means it's a bit more efficient as well. It heats up a little bit quicker. It will cool down a little bit slower though. But it just means some of the heat isn't being lost to the bottom of the plate. It's just coming through the top instead, which is much more efficient. So up to 190 now and 50, so that should now allow us to move things. So I need to move the extruders and do a purge. What I think what I'll do first though is move the Z-axis up a bit more. Just so we can see what we're doing. Right, I haven't homed it yet, so it doesn't actually know exactly where it is. You can see I've already got some filament coming out, which is the white filament. I've got a white and a black fitted in here. So what I want to do now is do the extruders. It's the white one which is moving. There we go, now it's starting to come through. Right, so that's working there. Now the interesting thing is this didn't show up as having dual extruder on it. So there's no extruder 2, there's only extruder 1, so I can't purge extruder 2. That really doesn't make sense. See, there's nothing else here, there's no other options. The software seems to think it's only got one extruder. Yes, that one is. The black one doesn't show up, so I don't know, maybe that's a thing you have to look into. Maybe I need to do a firmware update. Are you already, yeah, if I can do anything, but it seems weird you can't see both extruders in here. As I have no experience with dual extruder machines, I'm not sure what to expect, but that should work in my opinion. It should actually allow you to choose an extruder. Anyway, so let's do it right homing. And then we'll start printing and let's see what happens. Okay, that's good. I don't like the way when it does all the homing though, it sits on the bed, it doesn't come back up, which means it actually sits there resting against it basically. I don't like that. Print from SD. Let's print that out. This is my own file which I've tried doing. It's miles off the bed. Miles off it. Why is it so far off? See, this is just like nowhere near right, even though we levelled it. Stop the print. Why was that so far wrong? That's just like, nah. We'll try this again. It's like it didn't home properly. Bring this up a bit, even though I'm sure I shouldn't need to. It's like it said offset is wrong, but where was that? So now it's too low. First print's always fun. Tuning. So that's 0.137 I've got down there. This is just making a huge mess. Flow is just way too high. This is not putting down the nice bed at all. This is awful. So flow was quite a way off because the height was just so far wrong. It had nowhere to go, so it's squeezing at the sides because it wasn't actually moving up high enough. So now put the flow back to 100% and we'll see how that goes. Now it's actually controlling the heights properly, now it's actually off the bed. The very first bit I tried to print down, although it started off too high over here, it is actually pressing against the bed in the end. We'll have to re-look at those heights again and tune these offsets and stuff. That's just part of the nature of getting a printer, you have to figure out those tuning things you need to do. But it's going now. I'll change camera views and see. Now this particular design was based on a 0.2mm nozzle originally. So this is a 0.4mm nozzle that's on this. So that may cause me some issues with tuning anyway, because it will be a much coarser print. So it may not come out very well because this design hopes, you know, I know it comes out really well on a small nozzle. The 0.2 comes out beautifully, at least on my other printers. So obviously this first print on this printer, larger nozzle, there's a whole bunch of things here which are unknown, but we'll print it and see what happens. I mean, it'll either come out good or it won't. If it doesn't come out good, then it doesn't really matter. I'll just print another one. Getting that height initially right is very important, as you saw. So that's part of the thing I was saying about getting these rollers so they're stable, so they don't shift around, because that shifting around will cause this problem I had when I started up. Right? You do that every time you do a print, it'll be different every time because these rollers move around, and that'll be something you'll be fighting forever. So you need to get those rollers right first. After I've done this test print, I'll probably do that myself anyway and pull it apart and do those rollers so they don't move around. Then next time it won't be much less hassle. But I think I do want to get a smaller nozzle for this thing as well. We'll see. Yeah, I'll give you a different view of it, see a bit better, so you're not trying to look around a fan shield. So when I printed this particular model out before, I've used translucent pigment instead of white. I just want to see what the white would come out like when it's used, because it's a lighting system basically. So it's light pipes, that's what it's for. So I thought I'd give it a go with a white and see how that comes out. My main concern right now is that as I didn't purge extruder number 2, when it starts to print that, nothing may come out. So I need to be careful about that, because there's no automatic purging on there. I couldn't just wind it out. I should have done it manually by pushing the filament through, but I forgot to do that. This may or may not come out okay when it starts to just print the second one. And it doesn't use a lot of filament in that second layer. It's a very, very small amount. So I will need to try and purge some manually. Once I get close to that level, then I'll try and do that. I'll just push a bit through and hopefully not get too much staining. If I had a purge tower, it'd be easy because I'd be able to see what's going on, about fix it on the purge tower, but I don't have a purge tower set up. I just wanted to do it on this model and see how it comes out. But it's definitely much noisier than my Ender 3s, both of them. But, you know, it's something you could probably work on. You know, if you needed to make it quieter, you probably could do. Maybe I change the boards, maybe, if you want to, or at least put buffers on the stepping buttons themselves. You know, you can quieten those down by putting bumpers on there. I did that on my original Ender 3 before I got the upgraded boards, and that made quite a big difference. Obviously, I haven't set up the BL Touch, well, the 3D Touch sensor as well yet, not using the firmware for that. If you had that configured and running, you might find that these bed leveling issues are much less of a problem anyway. This was a bit hard to get set up initially, get going, but you know, that's the way it is. After I've done this print, I will look at getting the firmware and upgrading the firmware on this to allow for the 3D Touch to work, and then I'll do the bed leveling with that. I'll fix the bearings as well, so I don't shift around, and I should be much better after that. But you shouldn't have to really mess around with these things when you get a brand new printer. It should just work. You shouldn't have to worry about bearings being sloppy, or I actually think a lot of the noise is coming from vibrations in the body of the machine. You know, if I lean on this a little bit, it gets quieter, which this is just resonating a little bit. Oh, getting very close to needing to change filament over. It's 1.85mm, which is right where it's going to change. It's supposed to change at 1.9, so it's just purge them through manually. Make sure it's definitely right down. Feels like it's stopped there, so it should be right down now. Right, let's see what happens. It stopped. Right, that is not what it's supposed to do. Okay, it stopped, it's heating the nozzle. Now what's it going to do? Temp too low. And now it says the second extruder is at 0 degrees C. So it actually thinks it's got two nozzle systems on it. Well, that's great, isn't it? It doesn't work. Can you see that screen there, what it's actually saying? It says it's at 0 degrees. 0 degree setting. So it's actually switched over trying to use, I mean, that doesn't seem right, does it? It seems to think it's got two nozzle heaters. What? Control temperature. Nozzle. Wind it up. Oh, too much. Yeah, I'll do. Starting point, 205. You see that sorts it out. See if it starts printing again once it comes back up. That's weird. Maybe my setting's wrong, maybe the second profile didn't have a temperature in it. It's possible. That's a bit odd. I would have thought it should just carry on. Anyway, hasn't done that. And it's not heating. Even though I set the temperature, it's not heating. Okay, two colour, fail, doesn't work. And now it says this, heating failed, printer halted, please reset. Well, that's great, isn't it? Profiles which are built into Cura to do printing. I choose a default profile, change almost nothing, and it didn't work. Alright, so I just updated the firmware on this thing. It's a bit of a mission because the Geeetech website has got a firmware installer, a bit of software you can download using a computer. Right? Tried using that, wouldn't work. Well, the software worked, but it wouldn't actually update the firmware onto the printer. So I had to go to the GitHub page instead. I might show you a screenshot of that and put some links down below, something like that. And downloaded the Geeetech firmware from there, and then used the Arduino IDE to upload it instead. And there's two versions, you have to make sure you get the correct version. So, because it's based on a printer board. Now this one here is using version 4.1, so you have to make sure you get the correct one. The older version 4, you can use the previous version firmware, but you have to make sure you use version 4.1. The hardware is different, so you have to make sure. See, I'm using version 2.3 now, that's what I've updated it to. It was on 2.2 before, so it's a slightly newer firmware, and it's also added the BL Touch. In theory, let's have a look, see if we can find it. So, let's do prepare. Leveling, is it in there? Here we go. 3D Touch, options on. 3D Touch. Bed leveling. So, we shall do this. Let's see if it actually works. Let's do it. Yeah, that's not right, is it? Yeah, no. I've got a feeling it's got something to do with the fact the Z-stop is still plugged in. It's using the Z-stop. I think that's what's going on here. If I unplug the Z-stop, it might work. There's also a software option in Marlin to use a different input, but I'm not quite sure what the configuration's down here. I think this is just in parallel. So I'm not quite sure. Actually, hold on, I forgot to plug it back in, didn't I? Let's come back to that. Right, so I just did an auto homing on this, now plug the sensor in because that made a lot more sense. And it worked fine. So let's just do another auto home, I'll show you again. So instead of using the Z offset switch over here, it's using the BL Touch now in the middle of the plate. Well, I keep calling it a BL Touch, it's a 3D Touch, that's for their version of it. Anyway, so that worked. That did actually do a levelling based on that. Now, what we haven't set so far, now we've only just got the thing working on the BL Touch, 3D Touch, is the difference in offset between the touch and the nozzle itself. So that's what we also need to do, is go to the Z offset and sort that out. So right now the Z is at 10mm. So let's go in and do a prepare. I'm slightly off angle to the LCD so it's able to see it. Move axis. Now if I go 1mm steps. So as you think, this sensor might be too low. I can't go lower than that. So that actually won't let me get right down. That's still got a big gap in there. Probably about as thick as this remote control actually. Almost is, yes, it's slightly thinner than that. What I'm going to need to do is move this sensor up a little bit with these little Allen key on the side, lift it up a bit, and then I can do a positive offset instead if I need to, in order to get further away. So I'll do that now. Right, so I'm playing around the auto homing on this thing. I've just been lifting the sensor up. I'm going to try and get it so it's pretty close to start with that and mess around with the Z offsets and stuff like that. That is basically perfect. Right, so the nozzle is about 0.1mm above where the sensor touches. Right, so I'm set to do an auto bed levelling. Let's see what happens. I've estimated the Z offset about 1.2mm. Haven't measured it, but that's what I'm estimating. Might be slightly more than that. Well, minus 1.2mm. So this will take a little while to do the levelling. I've got it set at 7 points, so it's going to do a whole bunch of tests across the whole bed. That's going to take a little while, so I'll come back once it's done. Right, so I've updated the firmware on this thing. I'm now using the BL Touch version from 2 years ago. It was a newer version, but I didn't actually kind of have it working, but it just crashed and I couldn't get it working properly again. So I've gone back to this older version. That seems to be working okay. It does the BL Touch stuff and, well, 3D Touch, does all that stuff. And I'm now printing again. I've got a prime tower set up. I did have a mistake in Cura where you have to do some modifications on the code. You can hear how noisy this thing is. So there's some changes to the code in Cura for the G code to stop it from turning off the hot end when it finishes using the first extruder, which is what went wrong the first time. So I've done that change in the code. It's like a post-processing script. We're getting close now to this 1.9mm level where it's going to need to change over. So we'll see what happens then. It could be interesting. So I've got a purge tower going off. So what should happen is you go to the purge tower, purge out and carry on. If I've got it right. This is the very first print, aside from the very first one, where it completely failed. This is the first print, but I think I might have it set up right, at least. This is, well, the second print I've done, right? That's basically what it is. Still got a lot of tuning to do, retractions nowhere near big enough, I've got stringing and stuff like that, and I had my height wrong initially, trying to get my Z offset set correctly. So next time it'll be a bit better again. So at 1.9mm now, so I think this will be doing the white still, then after this one it should go to the black. I'm not sure I've got my purge tower big enough yet, I guess we'll find out. Does it fail, or does it keep going? That's the question. So I've got to do things like dial in my traction's too small, that sort of stuff. So I've got a lot to do like that yet. So we'll find out, I suppose. That is still purging white right now. Okay, what's it doing now? The black one is now moving. I don't know how much I need to purge it yet to get the black to come through cleanly yet, so this is still the experiment. Still coming out white right now. This is moving way too fast. I need to get these speeds under control. Absolutely flying along. So obviously I haven't purged anywhere near enough. Currently still getting white. Doesn't matter because I've got quite a high thickness of the top layer anyway. I've got 0.5 millimeter of thickness. So it should get to black before it gets there. But again, this is just trialing it out, figuring out what we actually need for settings, because I don't actually know yet. I might need more purging to get more black through. Looks like it. Everything's moving so fast on this thing, incredible. I really need to slow it down. In fact, I think I can. Can I change speeds in here? Speed. Let's slow it down a bit. I think this is going to cause problems with quality if I don't do that. And I'm seeing some black in there now. Looks like a purge tower is about half as big as it needs to be. But it's all part of the experiment, you know. You try these things and you just do it and see what works, what doesn't, and see what you need to change. And it's the first time I've actually got both colours to start coming out instead of failing, so that's a start. Obviously the bigger purge tower, more retraction, slower speeds. Or at least slower speeds on the second extruder, because you can actually change speeds between them. So you can actually have one extruder being fast and the second one can go slower. Slow the whole machine down when it starts doing the top layer. So you can do that. In fact, that's likely what I will do, is set that second one to be slower speed. This has got a lot of moving around to do because it's doing lettering. So this is the lettering and the enunciators, which is outlining. If you don't know what this project is, this is my Datron replacement display module. And these enunciators that basically have LEDs behind them to shine through and lights them up as letters. I've done these before, which are in here, in this bag here, on my Ender 3. This is kind of what the lighting can't see it. So that's what I got before. Now that's using translucent material. This I'm using white, just to see if you know what the effect is. It's at 2.3 millimeters now, so it's getting pretty close to actually stopping. It stopped doing a purge tower because now it doesn't need to change over. But I definitely need to work on the quality of this. It's just it's not great. Someone got the heats down a little bit actually. It keeps calling heats, temperatures. I'm used to using the word heats from work. If I make it a little bit colder, that should help reduce stringing. It was on 205, now dropped down to 195. Being a larger nozzle, it needs less heat as well. These settings are based upon me using a 0.2mm nozzle on my Ender 3. They're not tuned for this particular thing right now. These are just generic settings I tend to use on that. Okay, finished, and that is a mess. Where you going? You presented it and you put it back. It's funny. What did we get? Well, yeah, not great, is it? This is mostly because the nozzle's too big for this particular task, and my settings aren't tuned in yet. Prime tower simply too small, as I kept saying. The M has got lettering detail missing out of it. So I think a lot of this comes back to the nozzle being too big. This quality is just, well, it ain't there, really. I need to do a lot more tuning on this profile and get this thing right. But that's what it's all about, is figuring out what you need to do. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of there, but it looks pretty awful. And that's P, P and M, and that's REM here. And you can see it just has not come out. Yeah, it definitely doesn't work. I think I need to get a smaller nozzle for this thing. So I'm going to do this kind of thing on it. The detail just isn't there. When it comes to doing this kind of thing, it's best just to not worry about time. Speeds are too high. That's another thing I know about. I need to slow those down. Smaller nozzle, and I think we'll get there in the end. But right now, that's not impressive considering what my Ender 3 could do. After, mind you, I've had the Ender 3 for a while, and I've got a upgraded board and that sort of stuff, and I've done a lot of work on that, and so I mean, this is what comes out of the Ender 3. Right, those are the enunciators in there. Right, that's what came out in that one. That's using manual changeover of the filament. So I did translucent first, and I did a black filament over the top. Just changed it over manually, right? And that's what came out of the Ender 3. Whereas that's what I've got on this one. Needs more work, but I'm sure I can get there. Don't forget, this is also a 0.2mm nozzle, which gives it a huge advantage. Yeah, I mean, it did the job. It printed two colours, and I got there in the end, but got to fix a few things. So the firmware for this, what I had to do in the end, the original firmware from Geeetech, which you download, which is an application I used to load it onto the unit in here, it wouldn't work for me. I think I said that before, I don't remember now, I've had so many things going on. What I ended up doing in the end is downloading various firmwares from the GitHub and then using the Arduino IDE to load the firmware onto this, and that allowed me to then tweak the Marlin settings as well. You know, like you can change some bits and pieces in there. I did that on the very first time I did the firmware on this, but then it crashed. It's doing the bed leveling, which I was recording before, and it crashed. After that, it wouldn't do bed leveling anymore, the 3D touch. It just wouldn't work anymore. I even reloaded the firmware and that didn't fix it again, so it's a bit strange. Tried resetting the EEPROM, didn't help it, so I ended up reloading an older firmware and that brought it back, which is a bit weird. Yeah, so it's got a few things going on. There's some little tricks you have to use. You have to do a post-processing script in Cura. You have to tell it M104S0 to strip that out. What I've then done is on the end of print, I've told it to do M104S1, so it sets the temperature at 1 degree. In theory, although it doesn't seem to have done it here. Don't know what that is. Anyway, yeah, so you have to do that kind of thing in their post-process script. So it strips out that stage where it turns the hot end off when it finishes one colour and wants to go to the other one. That's where it failed last time. So that was needed in there. I found a video on YouTube about that. I should give credit down below for that guy if I can find a video again. I'll put a link in below maybe for that one, because that was very helpful. If he hadn't said that, I would be stuck still, most likely. Yeah, I mean, it kind of works. I mean, I've got to tweak that Z offset a bit more. It's still not quite right. You can see when I first started the Z offset here, this wasn't adhering. It's a little bit too high. I think the bed maybe needs a clean as well. That probably isn't helping. I think the bed has got some residue on it and needs cleaning up. A few things going on here. It's been a fun one, but it does work. I expect I'll get it working a lot better over time. You know, it's one of those things, you tune them and tune them and tune them, and they get better and better and better. The more you use it, the more you tune it, the more you get the better results. So I've learned a few things just in this one print. Prime tail not big enough, running too fast, heat's a bit too high, that kind of thing. Well, nozzle a bit too high. So this, just in this one print, I've learned a few things to fix. So I can fix those. The next print will be a bit better, better and better and better. And so I do think I need to get a smaller nozzle for this thing. But it depends on what you're printing. If I'm printing something quite small here, quite detailed, there's a bit of an ask for it, especially when it's not tuned properly either. You know, I've got to get my settings tuned. Oh, retraction is something I'll do, is retraction. Because there's a stringing going on here. Traction obviously isn't doing the job. So yeah, anyway. So thanks Banggood for sending this to me. And if you're interested in getting one of these things, because it's dual colour, you can do mixing and all sorts of stuff, check out the links down below. Hopefully in time I'll get better results out of this. I suspect I will. It's a matter of tuning. Catch you later.